Hello, everyone. This is Darcinovia here. It's been a while since I reviewed a Star Wars novel. This one is the last of Matthew Stover's Star Wars books that he wrote for the Star Wars Expanded Universe, now known as Legends. For those of you who don't know, Matthew Stover has written, in my opinion, some of the greatest Star Wars books ever. He wrote such classics such as Traitor, Shatterpoint, and the Revenge of the Sith novelization. I think every single book he has written before this one has dived into themes that aren't really, talked about that much in the Star Wars novels, and actually got into themes that aren't really brought up much, such as the morality of war, the philosophy of the Force, the the grayness of the Force as well, and the grayness of war, and how not everything is black and white. I think Matthew Stover does all this stuff masterfully, and this book, Luke Skywalker and the Shadows of Mindor, I was like, man, if he could write these books, this should be awesome, right? Right? No. Luke Skywalker and the Shadows of Mindor is the worst book that he's written. And if I had to be honest, I've struggled to actually find a way I could actually review this book because this book is just terrible. I mean, it's just one long, boring battle scene. That's all this book is. And Luke Skywalker, I don't feel like is in character in this book. I just don't see any reason for this novel to even exist. This book doesn't give us anything new on Luke Skywalker in Legends that you wouldn't get in other novels in this part of the timeline, which is another problem I have with this book. Any Luke Skywalker story that takes place, you know, in the movies or after material that was, in the EU that was written, it's like you know where this story is going to end up. Luke isn't going to, you know, die or anything. Luke isn't going to learn anything, that he doesn't eventually learn by the Thrawn trilogy. It honestly, Luke Skywalker in this story, it's just not really himself, honestly. Yeah, you have Luke doubt himself and have an arc of him being afraid of the dark side, but this has been done so many damn times in this at this point. It's like there's stories that have already touched on the very thing that Luke is scared of in this story. It was done better in books like you know Spectre of the Past and Vision of the Future, the Thrawn trilogy, the Jedi Academy trilogy. I mean, all this stuff is just done better in those novels. It's like this isn't the first time Luke's fear of the dark side is touched on, and it just feels like Matthew Stover just his heart wasn't really in this book. I don't know what his intention for this book were, but it just doesn't feel, like the Star Wars novels that I would expect from Matthew Stover. Now, it is very difficult, I know, to honestly be wowed by a Matthew Stover Star Wars novel after the likes of Shatterpoint and the Revenge of the Sith novelization. But what makes those stories great is you could read those as standalone stories. Traitor is part of a long, book series, but that was a great novel in itself that dived into themes that aren't touched on very often in Star Wars, fiction, regarding the Force, the light side, the dark side, war. Most of that stuff isn't touched on very much. There's shades of gray, in war, in Matthew Stover's books. This book is just There's good guys, there's bad guys. The villains, are fucking complete idiots. They're the new characters that are in this book. You're not even going to remember them afterwards because it's like, what? They're annoying. And it's like I forgot their names by the time I, put this book down. You do have returning characters from the Shatterpoint novel, like Nick. Nick was a pretty cool character in Shatterpoint, but here, he's just boring. You know, and he was like one of the coolest, side characters in that novel, and he just feels like just like any other character. You could replace Nick with somebody else, and not much would have changed. Vester Carr is in this book too, but what does he do? What was the point of his character to be in this novel, other than, oh, this character was what was in one of my previous novels? It's like he served no purpose. The main villain in this book too, his motives were just stupid. It's like, hey, I want to take over Luke or Leia's body so I can become immortal. Blah. The only positive thing I could say about this book is the connections, to other EU works, which, of course, that's something I appreciate. I appreciate some continuity with, earlier sources, but continuity does not make a good story. I mean, The Crystal Star is a terrible fucking book. It's a terrible story, but at least The Crystal Star has something about it that of value. I mean, it's so bad it's good. This book is just so bad it's just forgettable. There's just nothing that stands out of this book. By the time, you're done reading it, you're like, what the fuck did I just read? I mean, I don't like trashing a Star Wars book like this because, I don't do this very often. I don't normally rant, but this is one of the worst Star Wars novels I've read. Honestly, I don't like this book. I tried to like this book because I like Matthew Stover. I think Matthew Stover, writes, he wrote some of my favorite Star Wars stories, but this particular novel just didn't do it for me. If you like this novel, all power to you, but I don't really like Luke Skywalker and the Shadows of Mindor. It's one of the worst Star Wars novels, and honestly, for any new, fan who are interested in the literary side of the Star Wars universe, and you're looking into, which stories to start with, don't start with this story. You're gonna be turned off by the EU entirely. And in fact, I'd be surprised if there is an EU fan that read this as their first book. If you did, I'm surprised you still continued reading the EU. But then again, there's people that started with The Crystal Star or Red Harvest, and they're big EU fans. So who knows? Anyway, as tempting as this would be to give it the lowest rating, I will not give it fanfiction trash, because to be fanfiction trash, you have to be on the bottom, and this just doesn't qualify. Objectively, The Crystal Star is a worse book than this because, but it's so bad it's freaking good. This book, I'm just going to just slap it on bad rating. It's really bad. It's not a story I recommend reading for anyone who's looking for a good Star Wars novel that's standalone and you're new into Legends. Don't start with this book. Start with Truce of Bakora instead. It's a much better book than this. Or Heart of the Jedi, another great read. This is Darcenovia, over and out. May the Force be with you, and see you guys next time with another review. Thank you.